can't stop digging Night City.
City like any other, just bigger.
Nah, chica. Not just any other city. Morgan Blackhand, Andrew Wayland, Adam Smasher. Legends are born here.
Ooh, that didn't age well, did it? Night City is positively crawling with corporations. Whether they be peddling pharmaceuticals, software, or something else entirely, the dark future is practically defined by the sheer abundance of them, and almost every story that takes place here tends to relate back to the corps in some way. It's a tale as old as time, the underdog pushing back against big bad business. And yeah, admittedly, it's a pretty fun dynamic, especially for a world like that of Cyberpunk. Both the tabletop game and Cyberpunk 2077 offer the chance for players to stick it to the man, and to make a profit in the process. But here's the thing, chooms. Out there's one corp that you might want to think twice about messing with. The shining example for bad businesses everywhere, the Arasaka Corporation. Getting their start as a manufacturing company during the Second World War, Arasaka has since grown into one of the largest private militaries in the world, doing business in banking, manufacturing, corporate security, and more. But for all of the company's vast military might, there's one name among their ranks that's owed heavily to Arasaka's reputation as one of the most feared of Night City's corps, ever since the Fourth Corporate War, a character that strikes a particular sense of fear and awe into all who lay eyes on them, a figure by the name of Adam Smasher. An inhuman mass of flesh and metal, mostly metal, Smasher stands as not only a testament to Arasaka's technical prowess, but also as a warning to any and all who should dare to oppose them. Somewhere amidst Smasher's mass of wires and cables, there is what remains of a human consciousness, though one which is as lacking in human emotion as it would appear, more than happy to kill and maim sheerly for the pleasure of it. Adam Smasher has been a force to be reckoned with throughout cyberpunk history, sporting some of the meanest augments ever produced, and a flagrant disregard for human life. His turbulent past has put him in the middle of some of Night City's most pivotal events, solidifying this fearsome juggernaut as a true legend in his own right. So today, we'll explore the history of this man-turned-machine, referred to with such titles as the NC Boogeyman, exploring just how it is that he came to be so feared and so mechanical. This is the full lore of Adam Smasher, Arasaka's proprietary killing machine. Though most well known for his endeavors in Night City, the tale of Adam Smasher is actually one which begins on the opposite side of the country, in New York, New York. The son of a Russian mother and a South Bronx-hailing father, Adam was involved in gang activity from a young age, self-identifying as the meanest kid on his block right up until the collapse of 1996, a time of massive economic and cultural recession in the United States. The collapse was an event in cyberpunk history where the US government effectively lost control of the states, made all the worse by a stock market crash which had taken place 2 years prior. With no money and no law, 1 in 4 people would become homeless, and thus began a massive insurgence of both gang and nomadic activity. Adam was still pretty young at this time, and being previously involved with gangs up until this point, it would have meant that the only real effect the collapse directly had on him was that the streets of New York would now be filled with more competition than ever before. By now, though, he'd already worked through the ranks of a local combat gang, becoming their leader. He recalls in the Cyberpunk 2020 book Solo of Fortune 2 how this group used to hang out in the remains of Yankee Stadium at the time, and as we'll soon see, his violent nature was already becoming apparent. Adam was a natural-born killer, someone who took pride in conflict simply for the fun of it, waging bloody battle with seemingly anyone who it was convenient to take on. Perhaps it was this bloodthirstiness that led to the end of his gang, as it's said that the army themselves was responsible for dispatching the last of Adam's comrades, and afterwards, he would actually sign up for the armed services himself, spending 6 years as a Marine. Make no mistake though, this decision wasn't spurred on by any sort of moral revelation on Adam's part, nor was it born out of a love for what remained of the image of his country. Rather, Adam has alluded to his true motivations lying in the simple fact that the armed services had, quote, way better guns. Smasher's term in the Marines, to the surprise of probably no one, would end as a result of insubordination, after which Adam turned back to New York City and started right up where he'd left off, running some pretty intense solo contracts, including assassinations and demolition jobs, thus earning him a fair amount of cash and furthering his reputation as one who was not only willing, but in fact eager to take part in some of the dirtiest work the city had to offer. When he wasn't out committing crimes, though, it's said that Adam was gathering more gear and weapons, using illicit substances, and partaking in what can only be described as brutal one-night stands. Then, on one fateful job, everything would change forever. And not in a good way, since what ended up going down only served to make this guy more threatening to the populace. On one particular gig, Adam and a couple of associates were hired by an at the time anonymous corporate security executive to steal an undisclosed prototype from a competitor. It's said that the job itself was explosive in its combat, where Adam alone unloaded around 300 rounds of ammo. Regardless of this expense, though, the job was set to be a profitable one. And despite the immense amount of fire exchanged on both sides, the crew seemingly considered themselves to have the upper hand, or at least were sure enough of their ability to escape with the prototype intact. All of that would change, though, when Adam was hit directly with not one, but two RPGA warheads. These rocket-propelled armaments tore through Adam's body with ease, in no uncertain terms, obliterating the young Solo. It's not entirely clear what state Adam was in after this altercation, but though he had survived the blast, there was certainly not much left of him. His team members, recognizing that he was miraculously not beyond saving, were able to fit his remains into a backpack, and hurriedly carried him off to receive medical attention. The next time Adam was conscious would be in the hands of professionals, where his brain and nervous system were hooked into specialized sensory equipment, allowing for at least some form of communication. As it turns out, Smasher was considered clinically dead for more than 8 minutes preceding the attack before he was revived, and upon learning of the state he was in, it became clear to the sadistic Solo that he would never be able to live free of life support ever again. And not just normal life support either, mind you. He had effectively been reduced to a brain in a jar. Luckily for Smasher, and most unluckily for the rest of humanity, Adam would be offered a deal by the very same corpo who, through contracting him, had gotten him killed in the first place. As some of you may have put together already, Adam's mysterious employer was an agent of none other than Arasaka themselves. And having recognized Adam's skill, and no doubt taking advantage of his compromising position, the execs would offer him the following terms. The company would supply the funds necessary to create a compatible body for Smasher, not one of flesh, but of metal, a cutting-edge cyborg conversion, and in return, all they'd ask was a 15-year service contract. Adam has since said that taking this deal and converting to a full Borg was the best decision he ever made, and from here, his brutality in combat would ramp up to a whole new level, now on Arasaka payroll and working for their New York branch. It's not that Adam was necessarily more bloodthirsty after his conversion, but rather it seems that the new enhanced body simply enabled him to be more brutal than he ever had before. In one tale from Solo of Fortune, Adam praises his cyber body's efficiency and durability, proudly detailing a job in which he was able to quickly mow down hundreds of civilians in order to kill just one adversary, in possession of stolen files. He remarks multiple times that his old flesh body simply wouldn't have been able to wield the heavy weaponry necessary for this level of annihilation, and he's therefore thankful that he should never have to trifle with such shortcomings ever again. From this instance, and the many others like it detailed here, the true soullessness of Adam Smasher becomes all the more apparent. An already sadistic man, given the raw power to enact whatever deranged evils he may wish, all corporately sponsored, of course. At this point in time, Adam also wasn't strictly residing within just a single body. The exact procedure that Adam undertook essentially encased his brain and the remains of his spine within a biopod, which could be plugged into other full convert body models for different occasions. It's said that by 2023, Adam had accumulated a number of alternative bodies, one of his favorites, and the one he'd use most often, being a heavily modified Samson frame. He also possessed what's known as a Gemini cyber body, Presley that is said to have looked more like a buff, younger version of Elvis Presley. This has been detailed extensively by Mike Pondsmith, Cyberpunk's creator, on Reddit over the years, which is the same way that we've come to learn that Adam would also fake an accent to make him sound exactly like Elvis. Sometimes I wonder if Pondsmith just knows that we'll take anything he says and run with it, so he'll just make some stuff up like this. I love it so much. Over the next several years, Adam would continue to take on whatever work was requested of him by Arasaka, as stipulated by his contract. It's said that at this point, 7 years after being converted to a Borg, Adam had made quite an impression on the East Coast mercenary scene, and in the process formed a sort of rivalry with another well-known solo from cyberpunk history, Morgan Blackhand. Apparently, Adam would outright challenge Blackhand on multiple occasions, each time being denied or evaded in some way, which only served to upset and indignify the Borg even more. Undoubtedly, this contention was, at least in part, due to Blackhand's association with Arasaka's foremost competitor, a corp known as Militech International Armaments, or simply Militech as you probably know them. This rivalry would proceed for many years, right up through the impending Fourth Corporate War. Originally breaking out in 2021, the Fourth Corporate War began as a showdown between opposing oceanographic-focused megacorps, these being the French company Sino and the American firm OTEC. Each of these corps would then go on to subcontract the two other companies involved in our story thus far, with Sino hiring Arasaka, while OTEC enlisted fellow American megacorp Militech. Just as Arasaka and Militech viewed this dynamic as an excuse for all-out war against one another, Adam Smasher would have seen the mounting conflict as maybe, just maybe, being the excuse needed to coax Blackhand to arms, finally securing the showdown he'd craved. Now working full-time for Arasaka as part of the war effort, Adam wouldn't have to wait very long either. On August 20th, 2023, the Fourth Corporate War would take a devastating turn in what many consider to be its climax, often thought of as one of the most pivotal events in all of cyberpunk history, a day known as the Night City Holocaust. On this day, a Militech-sponsored strike team comprised of Night City's most legendary figures, including Spider Murphy, Rogue Amendiares, and Johnny Silverhand, would launch a raid campaign against Arasaka Tower, an operation headed by none other than Morgan Blackhand himself. Accounts of August 20th differ somewhat, even by the year 2077. But as far as Adam's concerned, here's what went down. The team of renegades led by Blackhand took an aerodyne to the roof of Arasaka Tower, where a team composed of Johnny, Rogue, Spider, and a Full-Borg convert named Shaitan, as well as a number of Spec Ops troopers, made for one of the Arasaka labs in an attempt to gain access to Arasaka's secret database. You see, before the data crash of 2022, Arasaka, who had learned of the incoming crash before anyone else, had copied colossal amounts of information from the old net, creating an archive of otherwise lost information based deep under the Arasaka Tower building. The goal of Johnny Silverhand's division on this mission was to either completely destroy, or if possible, make a copy of the database so that its contents could no longer be leveraged by the Megacorp. However, after breaking into the secured lab, the team was confronted by Adam Smasher and a team of Arasaka corporate soldiers. A gunfight quickly began to rage before, as detailed in the story The Fall of the Towers from the Cyberpunk Red Core book, a particularly fateful shot would be fired. I'll read a few excerpts from that story aloud now so that you guys can see for yourselves just what happened that day. On the other side of the room, Johnny crouches under a desk, fighting with his past between bursts of gunfire. I left Alt last time, just abandoned her. Not again. Never again. Better to burn out, says the hand. Yeah, Johnny says to himself, and he knows what he has to do. Suddenly, Johnny's voice rang out, not in song, but in challenge. Hey Steelhead, let's rock and roll. Johnny is standing in plain sight, a Militech SMG in one hand, the Malorian in the other. He begins pumping out rounds at Adam. Adam turns and hesitates, astonished at the audacity of the rocker boy, challenging him with weapons that won't even crease his cyborged armor. An arm comes up. The auto shotgun in it opens fire. APDS rounds cut the young rocker in half. Johnny spins and falls to the ground, a surprised look on his face, the Malorian still smoking in his fist. It only takes a second. Now, hold on a minute. Johnny Silverhand didn't die like this, right? He was killed in a different Arasaka facility after being captured. We see it firsthand in Cyberpunk 2077. And to that I say, fair point. That's because, if I may be so bold, Cyberpunk 2077 shows an incomplete, and at some points, flat-out incorrect order of events. I'm not going to get into this too much within this video, as I think the Night City Holocaust probably deserves its own upload, but basically, and I know that this is speculative, we're forced to assume that Johnny's memories are either A, unreliable because he was soul-killed after dying, or B, tampered with in some way, if not both. Once again, this is just a theory, but I mean, look at some of the context. The Cyberpunk Red core book, where this story just came from, was published in the very same year as Cyberpunk 2077, and this same order of events is echoed in the Firestorm series from years earlier. At this point, I think it's probably best if we assume that the events that went down on August 20th, 2023 are left sort of open-ended, as I believe that that's the narrative that Pondsmith is trying to insinuate here. And I mean, hell, this idea of nobody really knowing what exactly went down is even backed up in 2077. I know that's not particularly satisfying, but for the purpose of this video, it's kind of semantic anyway. Either way, we have confirmation that Adam was there, and that he definitely engaged Johnny at some point. Shortly after this, Smasher also takes down Shayton, who is the Borg convert mentioned earlier, while Spider and Rogue flee to the roof of the building where Blackhand was waiting. Shortly after this, Adam would follow, and from here, Firestorm Shockwave tells us the rest. Oh, Morgan. What the? Morgan snaps around and down in a roll out of the AV's open hatch, the heavy assault rifle cradled in his arms. Ah, damn. Adam, what the hell is he wearing? One of the massive arms of the power frame Adam is wearing waves a jaunty hello, the biopod clutched in it shaking about like a child's toy. Oh, I'm sorry, you probably don't recognize him from this angle, but this is your friend Shayton, or what's left of him. I'm afraid Silverhand is in even worse shape. At least the Borg's still alive in here. I'd give him another, 10 minutes before the pod's battery dies. But to get him, you're gonna have to get me. Morgan turns to the AV. Get the hell out of here, now. Chief, we ain't leaving you here. You sure as hell are. You have to make sure Spider and the others get out. Now go. I'll be along in a minute. He watches the AV lift off, then turns back around. Cocking the rifle, he intones, "Alright, Pipsqueak, time to see if metal really is better than meat. Let's dance." From here, a brief exchange of fire began. Adam at last getting the duel he'd so strongly desired, but the battle would not last long. As part of the assault on Arasaka Tower, a nuclear device was placed in the building to ensure the destruction of the database, and in the midst of Blackhand and Smasher's confrontation, this payload detonated. Both Adam Smasher and Morgan Blackhand would fall into the wreckage as the tower collapsed underneath them. After the dust settled, Adam would be rescued by Arasaka forces, and damages to his body repaired. The Dione armor suit which he'd been wearing during the altercation was stripped away, as was even more of the little biological components left after his initial conversion. These parts and more would be replaced with even more machinery. In addition, whether due to his modifications, or simply because they were no longer his style, Smasher would also transition away from humanoid cyber bodies like the Gemini, and by the year 2077, he was using a modified Dragoon frame almost exclusively. With his ever-increasing load of cyberware, some wonder how Smasher kept from going fully overboard into cyberpsychosis. After all, it's a well-known fact that in the world of cyberpunk, high volumes of cybernetics dramatically increase the likelihood of one losing their sanity completely. And obviously, Adam Smasher's just about as chromed out as they come. But while often we're led to believe that cyberpsychosis is a binary condition, either you have it or you don't, Pondsmith has revealed that this isn't exactly the case, calling out Adam in particular. In a reply to a comment from Pondsmith discussing cyberpsychosis, GreyWolf1000 writes, "How does Adam Smasher fit into this? If cyberpsychosis is based off of one's affinity to humanity, wouldn't Adam be a cyberpsycho because of his view of every being basically being equivalent to meat?" To which Pondsmith replied, "Didn't say he wasn't. There's a concept in psychology called high functioning. Adam is a high-functioning cyberpsycho who happens to have a job where they want him to kill people." Certainly, Adam never had much humanity to begin with, but with the knowledge that he's gone certifiably cyberpsycho, it's surprising that Arasaka put as much trust in him as they had up until now. And as we'll see, that trust was not exhausted yet. Once the Borg was once again in working order, Saburo Arasaka, the CEO of the company, would put Smasher right back to work. More bodily adjustments may have forced Adam into yet another contract, just as his original full-body conversion had, or perhaps at this point he'd just worked with the Corp long enough that he saw no reason to leave. Either way, his ongoing mission would be to dispose of Johnny Silverhand's body, as well as many of the Rocker Boy's old possessions as he was able to get his hands on, a task which, it's assumed, he worked on amidst other jobs. And I guess that probably brings us to Michiko. I just know somebody watching has been waiting for me to talk about this part. Michiko Arasaka is the daughter of Kai Arasaka, the CEO of the Megacorp at the time of the attack on Arasaka Tower in 2023. The fallout which resulted from the attack, and the disgrace of the Arasaka name, led to Kai being coaxed into committing digital seppuku by Spider Murphy of all people, leaving Michiko, who had up until this point enjoyed a fairly sheltered childhood, to be left fatherless at the age of 15. It was perhaps the death of her father which would almost stereotypically lead the otherwise intelligent and relatively well-respected Michiko to seek out just about the worst possible partner, becoming entangled with everyone's favorite cyberpsychotic, sexually deviant, at least 35-year-old Full-Borg convert, Adam Smasher, as soon as she turned 18, having met this metal monstrosity just a year prior. Yeah, Michiko might not have been right in the head herself. All of this has been confirmed on multiple occasions, once again by Pawnsmith, and he's even run this scenario as a campaign, which he's since detailed on Reddit. The name of the scenario is Michiko's Night Out. It involves the granddaughter of Saburo, Kai's youngest daughter, leaving the Arasaka compound on her 18th birthday in the company of her personal bodyguard, the super solo Kenichi Zaburo, Morgan's Arasaka nemesis. While she's out bar hopping in Night City, she runs into, and causes, enormous amounts of chaos, culminating in a wild fling with, get this, Adam Smasher, the cyborg. I ran this scenario for my own players, and extended it over several months. It's a favorite of mine, because the external threats are far less troublesome than the ones the players bring with them to the table, and Michiko is a wonderful NPC to play. She's like Battle Angel Alita, crossed with a mad girl genius. Given the nature of their relationship, though, Adam and Michiko wouldn't be together very long, much to the relief of Kenichi Zaburo, no doubt, who was always weary of this engagement. And I mean, yeah, I wonder why you wouldn't trust your boss's daughter with this dashing gentleman. For a long time after this point, things with Adam calmed down quite a bit. It's revealed in the Cyberpunk 2077 main job, For Whom the Bell Tolls, that he undertook a bit of work with Rogue around this time, a fact which Rogue herself regrets, it seems.
Got a name at the tip of your tongue, I know. Adam Smasher. So yes, but way later. You were gone and I'd stopped dressing in mourning. No room for sentimentality in the biz, Johnny. Smasher, me, we work for the same people. Does it stink like fresh shit? Yes. Did I have a choice? I did. Do I regret it? Very much so.
The nature of the work which was conducted here is also unclear, but it seems very likely that it somehow involved Rogue's team from years prior, perhaps hunting down surviving members of the group like Spider Murphy and Shayton, or perhaps she even assisted with tracking down the rest of Johnny's stuff. Sometime post-2045, there seemed to be a break in Adam's perpetual quest to acquire Johnny Silverhand's old possessions, stuff that was previously owned by the collector and Silverhand enthusiast Samantha Stevens. The most notable items recovered were his handgun, the Malorian Arms 3516, and his Porsche. Luckily, Samantha had kept these items pristine, climate controlling her garage to ensure they'd survive for years to come. But as previously stated, somehow it was Smasher who came to possess them in the years that followed. It may also have been around this time when he came to know Jeremiah Grayson, who would sort of take on a role as Adam's sidekick. After 2050, Adam would take a position as the personal bodyguard of Yorinobu Arasaka, signifying a further ascent through the ranks of the company, a duty which we still see him pursuing by the year 2077, while now operating out of the Ebunike. a container carrier docked in the Watson district, named for Mbole Ebunike, former governor of Night City. With this ship, Smasher actually set up a pretty sweet base of operations, complete with an extra cyber body and lots of guns. The Ebunike would also at some point serve as the place where Smasher would store Johnny's collectible Porsche. The Malorian, on the other hand, was awarded to Grayson as recognition for a job well done.
Silverhand's iron. You had it.
What? You a fan too?
Smasher give it to you?
Uh-huh. Reward for a special job well done.
For the next 20 years or so, Adam would continue a pretty routine workflow, fulfilling Arasaka's dirtiest jobs and furthering his legendary, if feared, reputation, all while occupying the Ebunike as a seemingly permanent base of operations. As such, his migrations to and from New York were now assumed to be over, Night City becoming the Borg's permanent home. The next time Smasher would make headlines would be in 2076, after he was tasked with the elimination of one David Martinez, an extraordinary edge-runner who had come into the possession of an experimental Arasaka asset known as the Cyber Skeleton. At Arasaka Tower, the two engaged, with both combatants utilizing their respective Sandevistan operating system implants to move with extreme speed. At some point in the fight, a projectile rocket was fired by Smasher, the force of which caused David, as well as Lucy Kushinada, and an Arasaka corporate fixer named Faraday, all to be thrown from the building, falling a considerable length to the ground. As they attempted to escape, Smasher made quick work of their associate, Rebecca, before giving pursuit. After another brief back and forth on the ground, Lucy and Falco were able to escape the scene, though Smasher would kill the legendary David Martinez, adding to his list of famous casualties. A year later, in 2077 though, the now 96% mechanical Adam Smasher's hunter-killer skills would once again be put to the test, in his last known arc at the time of recording, this time while serving as bodyguard for Yorinobu. After stealing the relic from his father Saburo, Yorinobu and Adam would occupy Arasaka Waterfront's Konpeki Plaza for an undisclosed amount of time, where the two were visited on at least a few occasions by Evelyn Parker. Eventually, Evelyn was contracted by the Voodoo Boys to record a brain dance of the penthouse where Yorinobu was staying. Through this work, she would learn of the relic chip, which causes her to plan her own heist in the interest of acquiring it. As part of this arrangement, the characters V and Jackie Wells would be hired to steal the chip. The mission went awry pretty quickly, as any who have played Cyberpunk 2077 will know. When Yorinobu returns to the penthouse unexpectedly, V and Jackie watch from hiding, as Adam comes and goes from the facility by way of the elevator. When the 158-year-old Saburo is killed by Yorinobu, V and Jackie are found out, and escalated from mere thieves to witnesses of perhaps the most important corporate upset in over a century. So to stop them, Smasher would give pursuit as the duo made an attempt to flee the premises, only just managing to escape, and not without a fatality of their own. Outwardly, though, the death of Saburo resulted in the promotion of Yorinobu to his father's old CEO position, and thus Smasher would receive the prestigious title of Head of Security within the company. It wouldn't take long, though, for the cyberpsychotic Full-Borg to fail to address what was possibly the first major security issue cropping up after his promotion, though. It's said that Sandayu Oda expressly warned Adam of the possibility that V and Saburo's former bodyguard, Goro Takemura, may threaten the safety of Yorinobu's younger sister Hanako during the Dashi Memorial Parade. These warnings were promptly ignored by Adam, with the allegation that Oda had betrayed Yorinobu, but much to his chagrin, this plot actually would come to fruition. Hanako was kidnapped, rousing Smasher to launch an immediate strike after learning of her captor's hiding place at an abandoned Vista del Rey apartment. Though the mission was technically a success, recollecting Hanako, to Smasher this was the second time V had gotten the better of him, and was certainly posing a threat to the Full-Borg's flawless, no loose strings way of doing business. And from here, the timeline of Cyberpunk 2077 splits, all depending on the choice V makes on the rooftop at the end of the game. In any case though, other than if they're to take their own life, Adam will be confronted for potentially the final time, in the area just before either the Mikoshi access point, as seen in most endings, or the CEO office, in the case of the Devil ending. In any timeline though, this fight can potentially decide Smasher's fate, regardless of who V or if he's taken over the body Johnny fights with, or how it happens, Adam is always destined to be bested. But this doesn't necessarily mean his end, with the option to allow Adam to live or to kill him left for the player to make. The end of Adam Smasher remains conditional, perhaps leaving more room for his evil to continue into the future. Though certainly not a good guy by any extent of the imagination, Adam Smasher remains one of the most interesting characters in all of Cyberpunk. Once a rowdy neighborhood kid on the streets of New York, he now sits, or at least sat, as one of the highest-ranking employees in what is undoubtedly the Dark Future's most prolific megacorp. Despite his warped motivations, he remained as one of Cyberpunk's few characters with no discernible regrets, and has earned himself a respectable position in the ranks of corpos everywhere. In a way, it's almost frustrating that such a blatantly villainous character, responsible for the deaths and disappearances of some of Cyberpunk's most beloved faces, has been allowed to lead such a fruitful career, and for so long. Perhaps more worrying, though, is the idea that given Adam Smasher's ambiguous fate at the end of Cyberpunk 2077, he may well be alive in future iterations of the canon, leaving the door open for this heinous Borg to terrorize Night City for many years to come. And just like that, you've reached the end of this video. Thanks for watching today and sticking around to hear about the lore and history of the infamous Adam Smasher. As always, if you enjoyed today, I'd love to see what you have to say about the video in the comments. I make sure to read each and every one, and I'm always looking for feedback both about the video topic and what I can do to improve. And hey, maybe you'll decide to leave a like and consider subscribing to catch the full lore of another topic down the road. As always, thanks for your continued support. This is Averberon. I'll see you again soon, and have a good one.